Oli, oli, paletitas. Welcome back to another episode of Las Paleteras. Today we have a new and special flavor in the studio with us today. And he's someone that we love and admire and are just excited to have on the set today. So hi, Curly.
Hi. I was like, oh, sexy flavor.
A new flavor in the studio.
I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you for having me, y'all. I was like, what flavor would I be?
What's your favorite flavor, paletas?
Well, I usually pick, I said like lime, limon, or strawberry shortcake. You know which one I'm talking about though, right? They had like the pink on the inside. And they had like the cornflakes on the top.
Like fresas con crema? No.
No, it was like they would, I feel like.
Oh, I know, the school lunch ones.
Yeah, no? I think so. Where they look like they have like.
colors?
No, they were like pink.
It's like textured. It's like textured.
It's textured. I feel like all the girls, like all my I feel like my Cholita sister and all her girlfriends used to all eat that. It was really cute. Like, I feel like if there's like Latina 90s food that I remember, it was like Ruffles cheddar cheese or Fritos, you know, this paleta.
And the dreamsicle one too, the orange one.
Which one?
That's what comes into mind when you think about the strawberry.
Tell me more. Like, there should be a thing.
Like, no, it's like an orange one with like cream inside.
Oh, yeah.
Not the leche.
Cream inside. I hate cream. I hate cream-filled anything, to be honest.
We should have been Las Friteras, man. Now you got me thinking about the food with the carne molida and the fucking like jalapenos. That was my style.
It was so good. You just shake it up.
That and hot Cheetos con Doritos. Okay.
Thank you for having me, though. This is really beautiful. Congratulations to all of y'all for this amazing project.
Thank you
to everyone that you can't see behind the camera.
So, te quieres, for the people that do not know you, te quieres presentar?
Well, yeah, sure. My name is Curly. Born and raised in LA. I'm from Hollywood. I'm a Virgo, double Scorpio. You might know me from your early days as a young kid watching BuzzFeed's Pero Like. You might know me from my show at PBS where we talk about being dead and buried. We talk about grief, which is what today's episode is. Or you might know me for my podcast with my best friend Maya. It's called the Super Secret Bestie Club. Or just the shenanigans I would get into with my grandma.
Okay. We're going to play a little game.
I love games.
Don't get too scared. These questions are too crazy.
I'm not scared of
any
any
question. But if they
question.
are, like, no respondes.
Ask me anything. I will tell you, like, the color of my asshole. I'm not really...
A ver,
I love how, like, the sound in the back went off when I said asshole. I went...
They're ready.
Let's stop.
They're like, color.
Okay, this is a good one. Who's the gayest superhero?
Who's the gayest superhero? I would probably say Wolverine is probably gay because I feel like a gay man drew that. Like, we're going to give him muscles and a hairy chest with veins, like dick veins on his arms.
All hairy.
That's my jam.
But like Deadpool, the Wolverine movie, unlocked.
I haven't seen it yet.
I'll just say, no spoilers, but it unlocked a new fantasy.
What's your new fantasy?
Bitch, Deadpool, Wolverine, and me in the middle.
Oh,
So we're all playing. We're going to wear costumes.
Even though I don't have like the healing generative power, but I'm like, whatever, fuck it, I'll die in between you.
Your throat does, according to what you were saying earlier.
I didn't say anything. Pregunta tú. Let me get
My throat is regenerative. What did you say, regenerative?
A ese otro no le pasa nada.
Let's see. I want to pick a good one. Let's see. Okay. This is a wholesome one.
Okay.
Who inspires you?
This is gonna sound really corny, but it's true. I would say that the women in my life inspire me always. Like the femmes, the queer, the women in my lives. Like when I watch how the women in my life, specifically like my primas or my sister, my tias, my moms, the way that they really pull people with them. There's so much community in that I'm always like, I take that into like my day-to-day, into like corporate life, into my artistic life, into my career, where I'm like, I don't want it to be about me, it's about us. Like, let's go, you know? And so I would say when it comes to Latinas, I'm a lap dog. Like, what do you want? What do you need from me? What do you want? Like, that is, I would say that. Like, wholesome answer for a wholesome question.
Yeah, and I feel the energy in how you relate, and just see, like, no nos conocemos tanto, but just like in how you, if you texted me, how you treat me, I'm like, I feel so seen and loved. So I feel that.
I was like, oh my God. And I also have like crazy
Mm-hmm.
ADHD. So I will remember that I need to send a text at like 3 a.m. and I'm like, wait till tomorrow. And then it's like 3 months later and I'm like, fuck. Because I was texting you how like literally every time you text me, I'm on a plane. I'm about to get on a plane.
Yeah.
Like I'm on my way to walk into.
She's booked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it's just, I think it's timing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if it happens so often.
yeah, but it was just like, I think it was, yeah.
Just joking.
No. I'm just, I don't want to be seen as
Don't make it right.
Es cierto, no, siempre me responde. No, you've been so sweet in like our exchanges. Yeah.
I appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Well, that answer should prep you for the next question. The next question says, ¿me llamas o te llamo?
What do you want? Which one would you like? What would make you feel better?
No, it make you feel better.
What would make you feel loved and seen?
No, that was not the question, y'all. Take two. A little bit of both. Reciprocal. I think that was cute.
A
But
verse.
no, a first. What?
A verse? Is that what you said?
Now he's sniffing you.
A verse? What?
I was like, wait, what? Would you give someone, what advice would you give someone who is afraid of coming out?
Oh, that's a hard one. I always say, like, come out if it's safe. I've always said coming out is truly a privilege because not everybody has community or people or a safe space that they can do it. Not just in America, but just globally. So, like, my advice is it's come out if it's safe. And if you do, and if you're lucky to have community, it's a lot of fun out here. So, get your...
I always tell people when they come out, I always say, welcome home. Mm-hmm. Whenever it is, I always just say, welcome home.
I love that. I always say, like, when you come into the jungle of queerness, like, coming out is one thing, but finding out who you are as a queer individual is 100%. So different.
And that's a lifelong journey.
Yeah. You'll. When I came out, I was like going to circus in the arena. So we
Shout
were
out
all
to
like,
circus in the arena.
I missed that era.
Yes, we were on our fitted little ball caps. We all were wearing our Sean Johns. Like you couldn't tell me.
Not your Sean
I would wear like my LA ball caps. I had the Daddy Yankee haircut, and then I'd be in a polka dot sweater because I was like still like, I was a little fashion boy. But then I went high femme. And I was like, okay, I'm like waxing my face. Yeah, like I had big curly hair and I would wear, back in the day, MAC had like Studio Fix and bronzer. And that's what I would like go out in. And it was like my, we would say more like androgynous days.
Yeah.
The metrosexual era.
Well, more like truly just down, people for the longest time couldn't tell what I was for the longest time. But so my advice would be...
I used to do that. I was a Scott kid, so I used to do like the skinny jeans that you got a Hot Topic, but you sewed by yourself.
Oh, I love Scott kids.
Yeah. I mean, I was known for having like my fucking 40 with my little
I love
Jansport leopard print.
Did you do the ska dances?
I did. I used to get into the pit and stuff, and people were like,
That's wild.
I feel like you've lived so many different lives, Nalgona.
I feel like is that like an LA thing, or because people say it to me all the time too, or is it like?
I think it's a little bit of the LA thing. I mean, because there's so much here, and like when you grow up in this jungle, like I feel like, and maybe what you said about like the advice that it is a privilege. I think some of it is also. I'm now stepping into a place and moment in time where it's like. Yes, there's a lot of pride of being from Los Angeles, and I'm like, fuck everyone else who isn't.
Yeah.
But also now as an adult, I can take a moment and step back and realize that it was a privilege to have grown up here.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like I think about the city now as a 30-something-year-old, and I'm like, and I grew up in this mess as a teenager.
I know.
On the bus?
Yeah,
Lord. So definitely, I lived multiple lives for that reason. And it was like, at least for me, once I discovered it and I had a bus pass, the city was my playground.
Oh, I love that. I think we talked about that. I remember you telling me that once you had a bus pass.
The city was
I hated taking the bus out here when I was a little kid. I hated it.
Girl, I used to go to some V Roma's, the bookstore in Pasadena, because I thought it was like cute and shit.
I just had big hair, and I told you, like, people used to get confused as to what my gender was for forever. And so people would just either pull my hair really hard.
On the bus?
Oh, everywhere. Because I just had this
my
big
God.
hair. Like, I'll send you guys a
I
photo.
need to see a picture. We can put that somewhere.
Yeah. And people would say, "Is it real?" And just pull
No,
it.
te tocaban el pelo sin consent.
Or they would sit next to me and be like, "Hey, where are you going? Like, what's going on?" Like, I just like, and then it would get kind of dangerous sometimes because they would think that I would be trying to fool people. Like, oh, are you trying to like fool us? Like, we know what you are. And I'm like, I'm literally just like existing. And it was like, it just would always happen anytime I was in a bus. I just couldn't, I would walk everywhere.
Well, funny, I mean, that's a whole nother episode, so we should probably say something. But I think we don't talk enough, and maybe this is something we should explore in a future episode, but the power of invisibility. Because I think also on the bus, I had to learn how to become invisible. Like, let me not hit somebody with my backpack. And I think that's why till this day I hate the rain. Because that's so random. But when you get wet, it means you have no vehicle, you have no umbrella, or you have no way to not be in the rain. So to this moment, I think it just triggers me for whatever reason. Like how you take up space in a bus used to trigger me because it meant that you were just more susceptible to some form of violence. And so learning to become a small invisible person, I learned
or being invisible or pretending to be something else. And that was I wasn't invisible, but I performed, right?
Yeah.
Womanhood in order to hide who I really was. So it's a different form of like, you know.
Invisibility.
Well, also invisibility, like just on the topic too, like of grief as well. Like I wanted to just take up less room, like more and more. So like my style changed, everything changed where I'm like, I now feel like I've kind of mastered a little bit of being invisible and I enjoy it so much more because I feel like I didn't have that before.
Yeah.
And I was talking to my therapist and I was like, I feel like it might be a part of my grieving. And she's like, because I also was talking about that and how I started smoking and I'm like, I quit again, but I had started smoking and I was like, I feel like I'm grieving. And she's like, I literally was about to tell you that the way that you're presenting, the way that you're dressing, like the way that you're moving is probably a part of your grief. You know?
So Curly, going into this topic, I want to say, I feel like I think of you and honestly, just everyone in this room as like being such sources of joy and humor and light. But today, you know, we're talking about a topic, we're talking about grief today, which is a topic that you don't necessarily traditionally think of as a very joyful or lightful for topic. And when we thought about, you know, wanting to talk about this, I immediately thought of you. I think that most folks that, you know, that follow you have felt a very close relationship to you through what you shared about your abuelita. And, you know, I feel like I've known you very briefly, but like I feel like I know you so intimately because of what you shared. And it like not only did I feel like I felt closer to you in how you shared this, and I felt like I could relate to you. And I haven't exactly experienced the type of grief that you experienced, but I still felt so much closer to you and grateful that you shared that because sometimes we feel very alone in our grief, no?
And thank you for having me about that topic as well, because I feel like a lot of people sometimes they don't even know that they're grieving when they're grieving, you know, and grief, a lot of times we tie it to losing somebody that we love, that they passed away or something happens. But like grief can be the loss of a relationship, a friendship, a job, a change in finances, like, you know, a dream that no longer might be possible for you to achieve, right? And you're just grieving that version of you. And so like, how does that show up in different ways? How does that manifested in the way that you dress, in the way that you're talking, in the way that you're moving? And so I love to talk about it because it is something that like we all do, but we don't all necessarily know that we're experiencing it when we're experiencing it, you know? But, you know, I think I didn't understand it as well as I did now until my grandma passed away.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think that like, they talk about how in ancient times, there was no word for the color blue. People would just look at it, but there was no like word. And so I feel like I was living in ancient times where I didn't necessarily understand what grief was. But now that I have a word for it, I'm like, oh, that's what that is, you know? And so I think seeing her kind of go through what she was doing. And my grandmother passed away from dementia and Alzheimer's. And so moving together through that journey and experiencing grief in that way, it's like the first time they forget your name, you kind of grieve that way. Like, oh shit, like, where am I? You know, the first time that they get lost and you're like, what the fuck? Like, she doesn't know how to get to her own home. We've never moved. She's lived here since like the 70s. the first time that they get mad at you. You know, sometimes your abuelas or your grandparents are the source of like love and only love. So when suddenly they're yelling at you or they're upset with you in a certain type of way, you kind of feel that too. And then of course when they pass and you have to now live your life, you know, without them, basically. It's like grieving. And then what does it look like? What does that process look like?
Yeah, I'm curious. Like that's something that I thought about. Like I feel like I've in the last several years, my first batch of grief was like physically losing a lot of people. And the last few years, I haven't physically lost someone, but I've had to. You know, we talked about what you mentioned is like there's so many types of grief, right?
Absolutely.
That don't and like it's in relationships, projects, things like that, and it's a whole moving past stuff, like you said.
LA, like grieving, kind of like what was my life like, and you know. Possibly another move again, another transition, another change. Like I saw this man say that the price that you pay for loving something is to grieve. And the only way to get through grief is to grieve. Yeah. And you cannot have one without the other. Like you can't have loved something. They're just so interconnected. And I feel like people are so afraid of it, but it's actually one of the most beautiful gifts that I feel life has given me, because death informs life in so many different ways. Like when you see somebody pass or you see somebody dealing with things, you kind of go like, what were we fighting about? Like, what were we, why was I mad at somebody cutting me off on the freeway?
Yeah. I have never felt closer to my family than when we've lost somebody. And if you truly nurture like that loss together, it is an opportunity to deepen your relationship with the people that are still here.
Absolutely.
But you have to do that so intentionally. Like, don't let it just be a blip. Like, this is your opportunity to get closer to the people that are still here. And
I think that one of the misconceptions I think y'all are referring to, right, is that grief has always been also constructed to be a finite emotion. Right? That
you get through it.
You get through it and that's it. And you live it. And that's what it happens. But again, because I think for the most part, we've associated with grief with just the physical loss of people, as opposed to like grief being the transitionary period between one state and the other.
Absolutely.
And if change is constantly happening, then we're in a constant state of grieving and living, which I think it's kind of beautiful.
It is.
You know, to be in this constant state of like, I'm dying and living at the same time, and always, you know, and it doesn't have to be so finite. Like my period of grief can be 3 seconds and I can live for 5 years, or I can grieve for 5 years and live for 3 seconds. Like there's such a beautiful feedback.
And it's not linear either.
It's not linear.
You could have one bad day and then have months of feeling okay, and then you have a terrible day because you just remember something. Something might activate you or trigger you, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way that we are working and the way that we work as humans and how we're moving forward.
And I think something you mentioned like earlier is that, you know, grief doesn't mean you're always feeling super sad. Like you can be grieving and feel a sense of gratitude and a little source of joy. And, you know, I lost my dad a few years ago, and, you know, thank you. And I feel like I've gone through so many phases of grief, and we'll talk about that in a second. But I think there's also been joy. There's been moments of joy and gratitude as I'm grieving. So I feel like you can both be grieving and be feeling like kind of a happiness.
Absolutely. Because I think that it just kind of, it just makes you realize like there is no kind of like, what did you say? Like you were like grief is a finite emotion. What did you say?
Yeah, it's been constructed as a finite emotion.
So, but death is, right? So something like death is like, that's the last period on the last sentence of a book or something. Like, that's just it. And so I feel like moving backwards from that and kind of thinking like, how do I find joy? And truly my dad, when I was a young kid, my dad always used to say, please tell all of your friends that they are the most beautiful right now, to enjoy their beauty. Because when you get older, you just like, because he's like, oh, everyone is so hard on themselves when they're growing up. Like, mira que como me miro, this, whatever. Like, you're never nice to yourself. And I feel like that's his life lesson. My life lesson would be enjoy the mundane. Because I think that like, when you are, I was talking to a death doula, and she was saying that one of the things that people take for granted is our autonomy, right? Like our ability to be able to move around and do our things the way that we want to do them. And she was like, we are so used to having this big world, this big life. And as you get older and you get sick, the first thing to go is your autonomy. And so your life goes from your city to your neighborhood, to street, to your home, then a room in that home, and then a bed in that room, and that's your world. That's where your world begins and ends. And we're all going there, right? So it's kind of like, well, shit, I'm gonna enjoy a paleta with my friends and have a good time while we're doing it. Talk about booty holes and unicorns and all that stuff. Like, enjoy it. Like, shoot. I always tell Maya on our podcast, I'm like, shoot your fucking shot. If you have a crush on somebody and you're like, I think you're fucking hot, I wanna say what's up, do it. Like, say, like, be messy, because it's nothing matters.
Because then you got some bomb-ass eulogies at the end, bitch. You like, look, she told me her booty hole was pink and it was. That's fine.
For real, it's true.
Eulogies from a unicorn.
I always said I want my eulogies to pop, and I want my ¿cómo se llama? My yard sale when I go.
Your estate sale.
My estate sale.
An estate sale. Can't be your yard sale.
You know, when I go through my shit, they're gonna be like, who is this person? He's pretty cool. I like this jacket.
That one cab, you're like, ay, mija, eso no se ve, mija. No.
Exactly.
You know, one of my favorite people that I've grieved so far is my tia. Just because I think I've become her. And I think, well, now that I do have a nephew, but I think the more I think back on her and just the life of the party that she was and that she is, because the beautiful thing is that you can say her name, like Tia Claribel, and everyone will smile. And to think about the fact, like now, knowing that she loved me unconditionally, and I don't think I realized that. I thought she was just my Tia Claribel that was fun. And now that I reflect back, I'm like, no, she loved me unconditionally, knowing that I was this queer little kid, knowing that I wasn't her cousin, my dad's child, but she loved me so much. And like now I know that I have to continue to live so unapologetically because that's me honoring her life.
Absolutely.
And so I love her. She's
you
my
honor,
favorite.
I think, the people that you lose in a lot of ways. Like, I think about, we're currently going through something in our family, and I think about, I get to leave the hospital. I get to go home and my family member is still there, like kind of in between in their transition of the next step. And I'm like a little tired. You know, I have a lot of work to do and I have a lot of things, but I'm like, I need to go and see the world in her honor, in the honor of life, of what it is. I need to go do something, you know, like, how do you continue to just honor? You know, one of the other things too that I always say is keep saying their names out loud. There's so many people who are like, oh, I don't want to like say their name. I get, as I spit, like, I don't want to say their name because you get kind of sad about it. And I'm like, to me, I really believe in the power of words and what that means, like just biblically. And, you know, when they talk about how God was the Word, in the beginning there was the Word and the Word was with God. And the Word was God and the Word was with God, right? Like, we can rebirth these people into existence by just talking about them. Like, I smiled when you said, my tia Claribel, and everybody smiles. I felt my mouth smile. Like, it just is this really beautiful thing of like, how do we within our grief find those moments, that little bit of light, and getting the chills, like saying this, and you know?
I feel like, and we'll talk more about like how we honor our people, but I feel like that's where I've found the joy has been in part my loved ones, whether it's people that have passed or relationships or projects, etc. Right? Like, we can honor every single thing that we're leaving behind. Absolutely. And that's, I feel like, the way that you can find solace and peace and joy.
There's one thing you mentioned earlier too, Curly, about your grandma, because I remember when I first found you on the internet, I was so drawn to that. Oh, nice. Just because like my grandparents are like a huge role in my life, and thankfully they're still like, I'm very grateful that they're all still alive.
I'm grateful too.
But it was during COVID. I feel like you were posting even more videos with your grandma. And I was going back to Mexico more often. And I'm like, you know what? There's so many times where I'm like, I go to Mexico, it's like quick, fast, visit family, and I don't like sit down with her and actually like talk to her. Yeah. And I spent a few months with her there. And then recently she's been going through dementia and Alzheimer's as well. And I feel like I've lost a little bit of her, but I'm like now seeing my mom grieve like as a daughter, and not like, that's my mom. And now she's like someone's daughter, where I'm like, se le olvida su nombre, she calls her the wrong daughter's name. And I'm like, it's like so sad, because you like want to remember your grandma how she was 10 years from now. And like, you can't, but like now you're just like being there in the moment for like everyone else that's still taking care of her.
There's so much that you said there too, because like sometimes with our parents, like we think of them as our parents. We don't understand. We don't see them as the child and their parent dynamic. We don't see like how they're grieving the loss of their mother or their parent through this terrible thing like dementia. I think that what really helped me a lot when I was going through the process is, did you guys ever watch the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Of course.
So like, you know how it's just like this hodgepodge of timelines and all these different realities that exist, and one certain thing can... So when my grandma would say certain things to me, I would just kind of dip into her reality. Like, you know, I would come home and I'm kind of... This is my uniform. I'm always in a white little t-shirt and some khakis and some crusty shoes. And I remember she sat down next to me and she saw like my chest and she started grabbing my chest and she was like, oh, and I was like, abuela, like, no. And she thought I was this guy that she had a crush on. And
I think I remember that video.
Yeah,
wow,
and so I was like,
oh,
I'm, and I told her that I was gay and she was upset that I was gay. And I was like, no, but I wasn't offended by it. I was like, no, a mí me gustan los hombres, no me gustan las mujeres. And she was offended, and I had never experienced her homophobia in that way.
Yeah.
But then my tias were like, no, she thinks you're this guy, and she's just upset that you don't like women. So that's what that's coming from. And so I, you know, every day I would come and she would give me a different name. Oh, Pedrito. And I'm like, okay, bueno, ahora me llamo Pedro. Ahora me llamo Roberto, whatever. And then one of the more intense ones was when she was talking to me as if I had passed away. So she was like, hey, and then I was coming out of the bathroom. She goes, hey, like, come here. And I went over and she was like, I want to tell you about my grandson. She goes, you remind me of my grandson a lot. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. And she goes, she starts to be like, he was so amazing. And I knew as a little kid he was different. There was just something about him that he was different. And she was like, you would have liked him. And I'm like fighting tears. I'm like, she's talking about me. Like, I'm like, that's me that she's talking about. But I had to like ride that wave too, that like, I'm going to go in whatever timeline her spirit is in. I'm going to join her in that timeline. And I think that that's kind of a hard part, but that's kind of what my idea of God is, the universe, the afterlife is, that there's just nothing. It's all just like the ocean of waves, electricity, energy, and just, I think that it's an ocean of love, and you kind of go like, you know, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, and just hope that you kind of disappear into that. And you know,
I feel that.
Yeah, so it's been interesting. And I'm sorry that's happening.
Y hablando de proceso, we have a segment that we call Sabías que, where we share a fact that's related. Nalgona said, y'all want to do us the honor, because I'd love to hear about kind of like where you are now with the process.
Let's do it.
Bueno, amigas, estamos otra vez en este segmento que se llama ¿Sabías que? Sorry, I was like, let me, the way we were on.
I know, we were like,
before we do ¿Sabías que? I think it's important just to mention, like, you might be asking yourselves, why are we having this conversation on Las Paleteras? But that's exactly why we wanted to have this conversation on Las Paleteras, because we as queer people don't get to have full conversations about the full range of life. From like what it is to come out. Like, I feel like that's it's become very cliche in these queer topics, but we also experience grief.
Absolutely. And grief and death.
And grief and death.
It's not a sad topic. It's more like, get out there.
Right.
It should make you want to live your life. Shoot your shot.
Life is too short.
¿Usted por qué cree que pregunté me llamas o te llamo, amiga? ¿Usted por qué crees? I was living my life. Bueno, so this next segment is called ¿Sabías que? So for this ¿Sabías que? We wanted you to know that, did you know que habían 7 stages of grief and process? In 1969, Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross established that there are 5 stages of grief. And more recently, another expert dijo, pues vamos a agregar 2 más. And so the stages of grief are shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. The stages of grief are not necessarily linear, which means people may go into them, go back into them. They may start as shock, they get to denial, then they get shocked again. O sea, it's a whole ass wave and process. So those are the stages of grief, amigas. Ya saben, otro sabía que es para ustedes.
And honestly, I feel like reading these, now there's like 3 different stages that I didn't realize I was going through. But Curly, given your experience with your grandma, is there like a specific stage you're in right now?
I feel like
grief?
it's funny because I've seen these before and I look at them and they apply to so many different parts of your life. I don't know that I'm in one or the other ever. I don't know that I live in any of them for too long. I have this weird thing where like, it could be my ADHD, it could be my brujo third eye vibes, but like, I don't ever feel like people who have passed like leave me. I always feel like they're just in the next room. And so I think because I certainly feel like, but that's the thing too, right? Like, I think that also changes because my grandmother was 83 years old. So I'm not going to necessarily experience anger because I don't feel like there was an injustice to some degree. You know what I mean? Like, versus other people might be grieving like the loss of a parent at a young age or something like that too, right? Like, depression, again, like it's a different type of grief, right? Now with my other family member, I am feeling those emotions. I am feeling a little bit of like anger, a little bit of like an injustice of like, how is this other person in my family just a terrible human and they're like living and thriving. They have 2 teeth left and 2 strands of hair, but they're living it up. And somebody that is truly just a gem of a human is like, what's happening, you know? So I don't know that I live in any sort of like space in my grief yet, but I do like that these lists kind of exist for people to be able to look at their, almost like have your problems in front of you where you're like, okay, what am I at? What am I doing? So with my grandma, I would say it's a little bit different. I'm in my space where I'm like talking to her all the time. I'm playing music for her. I'm singing to her. And I think with my other family member, I'm a little bit more like, I'm in the shock, I would say, you know.
You know what, though? I feel like I would add that as a stage that I think it's very particular to our cultural upbringings, maybe. And to me, that would be the stage of deading. Right? Like dead doesn't have a gerund form, but life does, living. But the dead don't deading. But I think at least as someone who was raised both Mexican and Salvadorian, like we celebrated a novinario, a cuarentena, el Dia de los Muertos. Our dead are always dead-ing.
Yeah, I love that. Like,
you know what I mean?
What are they doing? They're deading it up right now.
Yeah, they're
like,
deading it up. Like,
Bailando cumbias, bailando cumbias.
That's what I'm saying. Like to me, my
deading.
definition of God son esas pinches viejas allá arriba. Particularly one that I heard about from my grandmother, mi tía Julia.
Yeah.
Like pinche vieja, like she was wild, the bruja of the family.
Yeah.
And so when random shit happens, I'm like pinche tía Julia stirring up the pot in my life.
That's me. I cannot wait to be. I'm already such a mischievous individual. Like I like playing with people. Like I do this thing that I call like petty gaslighting. Like I had dinner with Maya, my best friend Maya.
Gaslight us, please.
Well, like it was me, Maya, and like somebody else. And she was like, "Oh my God, my favorite movie is Jurassic Park." And I looked at her and it's like, "You hate Jurassic Park. Like, what do you mean?" The other person has no idea what's happening. Right. Neither does Maya. And I'm like, "I thought you said you're afraid of dinosaurs." And I'm like, now Maya's thinking like, what the fuck? But it's only funny for me. Right. Like, it's only me having a good time.
No, that's funny you talk about being playful because, okay, my house, the house that I grew up in, my mom Airbnbs it. And there have been 3 people now. I'm putting this out on the air. 3 people that have like messaged us. Actually, no, 2 guests and then my sister-in-law that have like asked us, said that they think there are spirits in our home.
I love that.
And so at the first time that my sister-in-law was like, oh no, she probably just forgot that the lights were whatever. But then one person was like, yeah, like I think you guys, it's because you have these dolls and I think they're a portal. And I was like, oh, this lady's crazy, right? Pero ya la tercera persona that was like, I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but like, I think there are spirits in your house. And they were sitting on my bed.
Wait, I want to stay there.
And I was like, this is, and I was like, this is like the 3rd person. So I'm like, yo, like this could be a real thing. And I'm like, is it my dad? And my dad's he was a very playful person. I'm like, is it my dad like playing around with the people that he doesn't like or like, or what is going on?
Yeah, I love
Is it one specific room?
Look, if the dating are still dating, bitch, we got boundaries too.
But I mean, I've never like, you know, I've been in that home so many times. Like I haven't experienced that myself. So I think there's also like something interesting about who experiences spirits and who doesn't, like who experiences that dimension. Like it's another dimension in my mind.
People come over to my place and they're always like, I feel like your place is like, a lot of people call it the church when they come over because I'm always burning incense. I don't have a lot of things except for like statues and stuff.
Yeah.
But I love when people come over and talk about spirits because I don't feel them.
Yeah, I don't.
But I also feel like, is it because I'm queer? Is it because I'm gay? And the spirits are like, boo! And I'm like ramming some guy down, and they're like, oh, we'll come back. We'll leave. We'll leave. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like, what are they seeing?
What are those spirits saying?
Like, what are they saying? Like, what are those spirits? They're like, we like it here. It's fun here.
Aquella acción. Bringing their other spirit friends.
Eso no se hacía. Ay, comadre, mira.
Tráete la otra.
Eso no se hacía en nuestro tiempo, amiga.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm curious, like, so now where are you at? What's your relationship with grief now? I mean, it sounds like you're very comfortable, but how would you say you're like, what do you, like, are you afraid of it? Do you embrace it? Like, what does it look like now? And for Cesar and Nalgona, like, what is it right now? Like, how do you think about it?
I feel like I ride it. Like, I feel like I ride the wave. Like, I truly just like, to me, I almost feel like I'm honoring somebody that I love by grieving it. Even in a relationship, like if I'm heartbroken over somebody, like I had a relationship where when we broke up, like I would have breakdowns and be crying on the bathroom floor. And I'm like, oh damn, I really love that person. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just really, I can feel it. Because how often are you crying on the bathroom floor? Not that often, unless it's for something that warrants that sort of like reaction, you know? So I'm not afraid of it. I think that when my grandma passed, I remember feeling like the spirit of death was like, I'm your new friend. Like, get familiar with me. I'll be back. Yeah. You know, and I felt a little bit like, okay. Like, and then one day it'll be me that goes. And there is this amazing talk. Please watch it. Viewers, watch it. It's a TED Talk by a death doula named Alua Arthur. And she talks about what people experience when they're dying, when they're going, and what she hopes that happens to her when she dies. And it's kind of just like, I hope that I just disappear into the sound of, I love you, you did great, kid, you know? And you're just like, that's it. You just, you did it, you know? But yeah, I would say that that's where I'm at.
How about you, Cesar?
Wait, I had a quick question. You mentioned death doula, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what
death doulas are like people who don't necessarily like do what nurses might do, like a hospice nurse. They will kind of do a little bit more of what are your needs? How can I help this process be easier for you? In some states. In other states, they can actually mix kind of like the medicine that you yourself have to ingest so that you can kind of like, you know, some people do trigger warning, like their own sort of like offing, I guess. But I think traditionally, death doulas will just kind of help you if you are on your last few hours in hospice and you're craving a milkshake. Like they can go and put a little bit on your lips. They can make sure that you're comfortable. They can help set up, like one girl was telling me that she had a client that wanted to die in her garden, in her backyard. And so they just set up like a nice area for her to go in the garden. And so things like that, like a death doula. But there's like baby doulas, like, you know, like people that help you deliver these babies.
There's also people that transition.
Yeah. And there's actually a big wave of people becoming death doulas right now because it's just something that you're like, how can I make this an experience that isn't scary for not only the individual going through the process, but for the family witnessing it, you know, because death can actually, it's kind of messy, you know? It's not like in the movies where you're like, that's it, you know?
Or the telenovelas where it's like, the terrenos. No, I'm kidding. Sorry.
Do y'all ever do this thing though, where like you'll be in bed or something and you're listening to like a sad song and you think about your own funeral and who's gonna come 100%. And what people are gonna say, and then you start crying in bed?
I never did that before.
I just tell my parents I need to go first. Like I'm sorry. Like,
oh, that you need to go first?
Yeah, I was like, I need to be the first one out.
Oh my god, I told them that too.
The first one out? You mean like before them?
Before them,
I feel like I need to be the first one out.
That's funny because I know, like my mom, you know, she's lost so many people at this point, her husband, her parents, and I feel like she's so fucking strong, but the reason she's so strong is because she has me and my brother. And I know that what would actually break her is losing one of us before her. And so for me, I am a little bit afraid of death myself, but like I feel like part of it is because I want to make sure she doesn't lose me. Because I know that's what would break her.
That's real.
Because she has so much love for, like she loves, and that's why like I'm curious about experiencing that kind of parent love, because she loves me in a way that I don't know. I feel like I can't fully understand the extent of that love. And I know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I'm on the same page with you. I'm just learning now to also, as a survivor of like trigger warning sexual assault, my mom also overextends her love because it's guilt. And then that's been a lot of like our working through things.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's always like, I love you. And I'm like, down, but you have more children. You can go spread your love. I'm okay. I'm the oldest. I'm fine. And so it's always been a contention. It's funny because we were talking earlier about like not knowing how to receive too much love. And I think with my mom is always like, are you giving me too much love because you feel guilty? And like it's okay. But similar to you, I think that I'm like recently, I think very much so in my life, death also came around, and it's like, okay, dope. Okay, bitch, I see you. But like, not me, okay? Like, put me at the end of the list. And like having to battle with that, and only because of my responsibility. Like, I feel like I want to die when I'm like 65 and up. And the only reason
that's really young though, by the way.
I know. The only reason I say that is because I've lived so much of a life already. I've lived 20,000 lives. But by that age, the youngest person in my life would be an adult.
And that's when you would feel like,
that's when I would feel I'm ready to go.
Okay, I see that.
That's the only reason.
You feel like there's like a lot of things that you have to take care of that,
before I go. And because I've never experienced the death of a parent, that to me feels very, very scary. So I feel like I randomly think about my mom already being dead. So I can start crying now. And I can start grieving now.
What's your sign again?
I'm a Capricorn.
That's so Capricorn.
I need to be ready. You know what I mean? Like, I'm training for death.
What I realize is I'm yo no estoy lista for that. Like, I feel like when my dad passed, it was devastating. But at the moment, me and my brother like stepped on my mom too. But we stepped up and we got shit done to honor him. Pero I feel like right now, if my mom, I told God, I was like, mira, no estoy lista. Like, please give me so much more time, because if she were to pass like suddenly the way that he did, I don't think I could get myself off the floor. Like, I could not plan her funeral. I wouldn't have the capacity. And so similar to you, I'm like, I know I need to prepare for that. I'm not there yet. And I really pray to God it doesn't happen.
Well, I was just gonna say, but I think also just the fucked up thing about the society that we have constructed is that we have to prepare all these bureaucratic processes for death. Because now you say that, and now that I'm older and my parents are getting older, I think more than anything, in addition with grief, that pre-process that comes with it is a reconciliation with mortality. And having to reconcile with that, I think it's been very, very interesting. I mean, y'all know, I've shared with y'all that I've been very sick. So I've had to reconcile with my own mortality a lot this year. And so that's been scary. But then also having to be like, if for whatever reason any of my parents die, I have to know as the oldest where their plots are, what the life insurance is, what is the game plan for the rest of my siblings, and do I move in with all of them? Like, there's all these scenarios you have to play out.
Absolutely.
That it's like, and it's kind of weird to say what I'm going to say, I guess, now that I'm thinking about it, but how funny and ironic that's the queer child is the one that has to do all this.
Oh my God, I feel like it's always the queer child. I feel like it's always the queer child that has to do it, has to bear the brunt of all of that. Or it's like, you know, one of the girls, of course, like one of the,
I feel like it's,
you know, the women.
You mentioned something earlier about being like with your sibling. Because I feel like my sister had cancer when she was younger, so I feel like I almost lost her. And I always tell her, I'm like, girl, like, I have to be the first one out, because if not, like, I don't think I could ever live without like the one person that's left for me. Because I feel like I went through all these phases of like, Diosito, ¿por qué le dices cancer? Like, you should have given it to me so she could be like this 4-year-old little girl and like be super happy. And I feel like we've gone through phases of like, okay, it's helped our family get stronger, but also like things happen for a reason, and now she wants to help other little kids who have cancer. But for me, I feel like, I don't know, thinking of like losing a sibling, I was talking about this now, I'm like, like I can't. I don't know if I'm ready. I feel like I'm not.
The whole point, I think, of like the conversation too, right, is that we're catastrophizing in a lot of ways, right? Like we're thinking about all these ideas that have not yet come to pass, and we don't even know if that's how they will come to pass, right? So like, how does that inform what you do with your life when you leave this studio?
Right.
How does this inform like the next conversation that you have with somebody, or like what you're gonna do when you get into that car, or however you're gonna get home, or when you put that head on your pillow? I mean that your head against a pillow. What does it do? Like, how are you going to live it up?
And we have to
So I think the question is like, what is
like, in a way.
what are the lessons
What are the
lessons that we've learned through the different grief that experience? What has helped us process them, and like what are we taking?
Absolutely.
So what are those things for
I
y'all?
guess that the reconciliation part, because even as my own little fucking headed anxiety is planning all these multiple scenarios, you are never prepared.
You're never prepared.
You're never prepared. And I think that the one grief that taught me that was my grandfather, because I wasn't there when my grandfather passed away. I mean, he was in El Salvador, I was in Boston. But 5 years later, I had this weird, vivid dream that man hugged me so tight, and I woke up crying so much. And I feel like I woke up grieving 5 years because I hadn't cried him as much as I've wanted to. But even in that moment, just to think about like, damn, pinche viejito, 5 years later, you came to haunt me. But you know, like in that moment, and reconciling that again, you will never, be prepared for that. I've always heard grief be defined as misplaced love. Right? Because you don't have that person to love that will reciprocate and close the feedback. So a lot of the times grief is like this love that you throw into the ether. Which is beautiful in many ways as well. Pero, o sea, that reconciliation of like, bitch, as much as you want. You're never ready.
But something I feel like that sort of has prepared me a little bit is learning that the best thing that I can do to be sort of prepared is to make sure that I feel like I was really present in whatever experience this was, whatever relationship this was. So for example, with my dad, one of the things that gave me a lot of solace and peace is that especially like we took a lot of trips together. And even like in the recent years before he passed, like he had never been to Europe, and we finally went to Spain. He wanted to go to a pub in England and like drink a beer, and we got to do that like a year before he passed. And like, I get to think back, I have those really, and we got to go to Mexico. Like we had these really beautiful trips. And I also did a lot of like reconciliation with him before he passed, like in terms of like forgiving. He was a recovering alcoholic. I always felt like he didn't do enough for my mom. Like but it's like I had to forgive him. I forgave him, forgave myself too. And so I feel like I fully had accepted him before he passed. And we shared these beautiful memories that I can always drop back on. And me going back to those memories gives me a lot of peace and joy. And I'm like, I have these beautiful memories. So I think that what I would share with folks that maybe are experiencing grief or haven't, or is like, be as present, create beautiful memories, reconciliate with the people in your life as much as you can. And a veces no se puede, ¿verdad? But as much as you have peace, sometimes reconciliating with somebody else is you having peace with what you shared with them. And absolutely. You can't control how they're going to respond, but if you have peace with what you gave them, that's it. And then, so when they do pass, you don't have to, I wish I did this. So like whatever you can to be as present and create beautiful memories, and having those to draw back on has given me a lot of peace and solace.
I feel like peace, and I love that, by the way, so much. And I think peace and reconciliation doesn't look the same for everybody, right? So like sometimes you can't make peace with somebody, and your peace means more to you, and it happens, and they go. And I think if you're comfortable living in that space, like that's okay. I'm in the group where I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you or what's going to happen to us. And I want you to know that like, I love you so fucking much. Maybe not within the confines of which I would have wished to have loved you, or how I wish this relationship to have gone. But I fucking love you, and that is yours to take with you for forever, and I'll see you later. Like I'll see you around, But yeah, I appreciate you for saying that. It's beautiful.
Thank you. You said this? Any?
I feel like you said it perfectly.
I
feel like that's what I'm like doing now with like my parents and my grandparents, like trying to like seize every moment and have those memories to look back on, y no tener como, hubiera ido a México a visitarlos, like hubiera hecho esto con ellos. Like I'm doing that now in the present, which I feel happy about and privileged enough to be able to do it.
Yeah, or even talking about other types of grief. What's helped you through other types of grief that aren't necessarily como physical loss? Because that's what I've been experiencing a lot recently.
Well, I think it's been a lot of, for me, similar, knowing where I come from is very, very powerful. And now that I have like my last living grandparent, being able to spend time with her has been really, really fun. And I, for the first time, got to see my mom be a child because we go with my uncles. And I think that's why my Salvi half is gonna hate me because I've become more Mexican. But just because I honor my mother. I grew up in a machista culture. Yeah. So of course I grew up Salvadorian. My father's Salvadorian. Yeah. And so the Mexican side, out of all my siblings, I'm the only Mexican one. It's like, bitch, we came from the same Mexican vagina. Like, shut up. But also, what is like nationalism? But anyhow. But no, it's just been so beautiful to see my mom become a child. And then I realized she is a middle child. And I was like, oh my God. That explains so much trauma. I was like, I got it. And like my mom becomes my uncle's mother. And then I was like, well, why is that? And I got to understand the dynamics of their family. Yeah. And it was like, and even when I've been there, they got into a whole ass argument and they got in a fight with their mom, and me and my brother were there. We were like, we're not getting in this. This is a child mother fight, and we're not part of that dynamic.
Oh, I love that.
So we're not getting in this fight. And another moment, my mom and my grandmother got into it, and my uncles knew that they had to get their mom, and I was gonna go get my mom. Like, it's just been such an interesting dynamic, but also getting to learn about my tia Julia and getting to know a lot about my ancestors has been really, really fun. So for me, that's been interesting. I definitely have some practices that I've learned here and there, how to honor ancestors. Yeah. I need to be better in some of the practice. But Dia de los Muertos has always been something I was raised with, so that's been beautiful. Though my mom used to scare us because she used to tell us that we never knew who was gonna come, like what type of muerto was gonna visit us, so we had to be okay. But she was basically saying the demons were gonna come and get us. So I never knew a parent that could use Dia de los Muertos to scare children until I met my mother. Wow. And so I think a lot of those things have helped me for sure. Similar to what you said earlier, I mean, about the shooting your shot, but I mean, sometimes you have to do that with life. Yeah. And I think I've learned a lot of that, of just being like, well, fuck it. I mean, the things that I've lived, I'm like, I definitely have been protected by a couple of people because some of the things that I've done, I'm like, how am I still here? And so I take full responsibility of that now. And just say, okay, continue to move forward and do what you gotta do. And I think continuing to now change a couple of patterns, because I think as a queer person, I never thought I would make it to be a queer adult. And so I think I've still held on to a lot of patterns from when I was when I thought I was a queer, indestructible queer, and now I'm not. So there's a couple of changes that I have to make, because I think now more than ever, I'm not necessarily afraid of death. I'm afraid of not living enough, because there's so much more to live, you know? And so that's been interesting. That's where I'm at.
I kind of love that more, to be honest. I would much rather there be a fear of not living enough than of death. Because like death is like inevitable, right? Like it's coming and all of that. But like not living enough, like, you know, somebody the other day was like, I don't know what they asked me, but I was like, no, I have like life FOMO. Like I want to see things, taste things. Like I want to, like, yes, where can we go? Let's go now, you know? Because I want to take it all in before I don't have it anymore.
That's why I think I anthropomorphize a lot of things. That's why I talk to spirits, like there are people. I'm like, aguántame, I need more time. Espérame.
Cuídame más.
I do that too all the time.
But I feel like that's the way to face death, right? It's like how you live, right? It's like transforming that. No. I mean, I feel like I used to be really scared of death, and the point that it I would stay up at night, like, oh my God, like the thought of not existing, and the way that I was able to work through that was like, well, the best thing I can do is just like live so presently and really like a really rich life, and I feel like that's the antidote.
All you can do.
That's the best thing that you can do.
Shoot your shot, make out with whoever you want to make out with, eat whatever, like. Whatever, if you want that extra piece of cake, fucking eat it. Eat a culito, whatever you want. Like, be the version of health and happiness that is the best suitable for you. Do it up.
Yeah.
Eat a culito, eat a paleta. Ask us some questions.
Do I get the final question?
Yes, you get the final questions.
Okay.
Ay, amigas, llegamos al final, sí, ya sé.
Okay, so I wanted to ask them a question. Ready? Is that too loud? Is that like...
No, I like the ASMR.
You know what? I hate ASMR.
Bitch, I be falling asleep to it.
I hate it. I don't like when people are that close to my ears. And when
No,
they're
it's
like,
weird
when
to
they're
me
like,
too. Yeah, that's
I hate
no.
it.
Estoy igual que tú.
I know, when I was like eating the popsicle, I was like, I'm so sorry. You're like hitting me suck on this shit. Okay.
Oh.
This is the questions.
¿Con quién empiezas?
Okay. We can start on this side.
Okay.
Wait, can I
You can
pick
pick different-
3?
yeah.
Okay, I want to see which ones I like.
Pick the ones you like.
Okay. Oh, this is what I got. Okay, this one might be a little bit hard, so we'll try it. What is an embarrassing moment that happened to you recently?
Embarrassing moment. Do you have one already? You have one in mind?
Laughing, I can't wait. I want to laugh at your embarrassment.
I feel like I had a good one
Yeah,
recently.
I feel like it's a little hard to...
I had a good one. Well, this one's like not that embarrassing because it didn't happen in front of that many people, but it's the one that just came to me. But like I was just like in a car and then I felt like a big hit in my face, like somebody had punched me.
Oh my God.
And then I looked down and it was like a bee that had just like ran into my face like from outside and just like hit
Stung
me.
you?
And stung me.
Oh my God.
Because I had the window down and the bee just flew at my face. A bee came at my face.
No te la comiste. Like, cool.
And I was like, what was that? And then I looked down and I like, see, and I still had the little stinger in my cheek.
Oh my God, that reminds me of my aunt that's going through her stuff right now. She had a very similar thing where a bee came in and stung her eye. So she had a big, I don't know, bump on her face.
No.
Yeah.
So it's not that embarrassing, but a little bit. Yeah.
I think I had one. It's not embarrassing, but I
yeah.
was like, my dad just found this massive Cane Corso dog that I now own that I took. And I was walking him and I was on the phone with one of my best friends and I was like, this dog takes some big ass shits, big ass fucking shits, big. And I turn around and there's like a señora behind me. It's not embarrassing, but I felt like, I was like, oh, I hope she doesn't think that I'm complaining about my dog's shit. So I was like, it's great that he has a healthy bowel movement.
Today was solid.
Yeah. It's like, it's me that feeds him. It's totally not his fault. Like, but I felt this moment of like, oh my God, I hope that she's not like, that guy's an asshole to his dog and his shits. But okay, if you can't think of that one, that's not the one I want to. There's another one. A queer slang everyone should know.
You're like the queer slang.
I feel like
glossary.
I needed more education, especially on the gay side. So, educanme.
I'm going to give you only American slang because I don't need you to gentrify Mexico anymore.
They've done enough.
You've done enough.
I have one that I like.
Okay, which one?
Docking.
Docking.
I haven't heard that one.
What is that?
Docking?
No, it's
Do y'all know what docking is?
the producers know.
Not the producers.
Wait,
doing
what's
the actions. It's when you...
Come demonstrate. No, I'm kidding.
It's when you... And I think it's queer slang because it's probably something only gay men would engage in or queer men would engage in. But it's like if somebody has like foreskin and you basically fuck their foreskin.
Yes, I know what docking is.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
so
didn't know that was a
docking.
thing.
Yeah.
But we do love foreskin. We do love foreskin.
I didn't know that was a thing. Well, now
goes
you
in the
can
glossary.
name the things that you do every Friday night.
Now I need to explore more things.
Yeah,
All
no,
right.
this bitch is like vanilla. We've discovered. No,
I'm slowly getting into my queerness.
You're a queer elder.
No, but I loved it that episode. You know what episode we're talking about, viewers, because you probably laughed along too. Tú que lo has hecho todo, Nalgona, and I was like, what?
I'm
What did
learning.
I was like, damn, I've done everything.
Have you done everything?
Not docking?
Not docking. I don't think I've done docking before.
I've done docking. It's because you have to have the right amount of foreskin.
Okay.
Okay. I mean,
And then you...
then you.
Now you're getting bashful about it.
It's because it's fun. My favorite thing to do is like cuando la jalas and then la chupas, pero la jalas también because it creates friction and it gets sensitive.
Wait, I don't understand that.
Yo, I was hoping to have one episode I could show my mom. This is not going to be it either.
Well, just have her stop at like
Yeah, have her stop in the floor.
yeah.
50 minutes.
Well,
No, I mean, okay, I wish there were queer slang that I do love. Y'all should follow Karina Torres oficial on all social medias. Pero la Cari Torres, she just did a special. She's a trans woman from León, Guanajuato, amiga de Wendy. And she always says, nada que verientas, come cuando hay, rasca cazuelas, pinche señora de pueblo de ¿cómo dice? 3 topes, 5 perros y 40 halcones or some shit like that. But she's hilarious.
So what is one of those, what is like raspa, what was it? Raspa?
Nada que verienta. So
Raspa
nada
cazuelas.
que ver, nada que ver.
No, you said raspa.
Raspa cazuelas.
Okay,
Raspa cazuelas.
so what does that mean? Like, what is that
Like,
translate?
bitch, when you sell broke, you literally scraping the things of the cazuela.
La costrita, la que queda.
Yeah. Or nada que verienta. Nada que verienta is my favorite, which nada que ver means like basic, nothing like whatever.
Yeah.
So una nada que verienta, she's a basic bitch. O come cuando hay is like someone who can only eat when there's food. It's so fucked up.
He has a new queer slang every episode.
They
Or
would
like
call
5 new
They
words.
would call somebody who's like,
They're followers. So all of their following, their whole audience is based on talking shit to each other. So like literally the audience, her audience on her lives would be like, ¿Qué hubo pareces la tarjeta del Apache de la lotería. Like they'll call it, like they call her Apocalipto. Cause she's hella proud. And so they be talking mad shit.
God.
And then they talk shit back to the audience. And that's her love
I
language.
just love like when people have that. I'm such a sensey baby. You can't call me nothing and me not start crying. Like you can't call me. You know, I would get super sensitive about it. Yeah, for sure. Although Apocalypto would be a compliment because they look beautiful in that movie. Like that's a badass movie. Maybe not the director, but the movie was
Yeah.
Do we want to ask one more question to Cesar? Did you answer one yet?
Did I?
I don't think you did, bro.
Yeah, answer one. Okay. Oh yeah, that was
Not that one.
not that one. No, I got that one already. What is something small that really makes your day?
That makes my day.
Yeah. What is something small that really makes your day?
That's cute.
Um,
Cafecito.
What is something dirty and vulgar that's small that really makes your day?
I was gonna go PG.
I'm just
Or
kidding.
should I
Go
R?
PG. Go PG. Go PG.
I'll give PG for your mom. But I think one thing that makes my day is calling my mom every day. Yeah,
That's
I have my little
very
cafecito,
sweet.
le llamo en la mañana, and if I don't, I get yelled at. Or like I'll yell at her, I'm like, no me hablaste, no en chisme, no hablas de party. But that's like my little thing I have to do.
That's so
once a
sweet.
day.
¿Qué se te olvidó que tienes madre? Sí, se me olvidó.
Literally. Más me hablas cuando quieres algo, and I'm like,
Now what's the vulgar?
the vulgar. But anyways, we're out of time.
Are there
So
any,
thank you,
any-
Curly.
Yes, thank you,
for joining us today.
Or is there any last thought that anyone wants to leave, or related to our
I feel
topic?
like my final
just
thought
do that?
is the urgency, with the utmost urgency, I would just say, live it up, enjoy the mundane, the small things, like revel in them, love people, hold them, and have so much fun. I saw this thing that said, like, what is the meaning of life, right? Like, people want to know, what's the meaning? And they said, like, when you hear a really beautiful song, like, you don't ask it why it's so beautiful, you just enjoy it. So enjoy the song that is your life, is what I would say.
Well, we're out of time, but thank you so much, Curly, for joining
you
us
for
today.
having
We had so
me.
much fun talking to you. So where can we follow you? Where can everyone follow you?
You can hit me up at the Curly V Show on Instagram and TikTok.
No OnlyFans?
No, not yet.
Kidding.
I am on WikiFeet though. Like people post my photos of my feet on there.
On
And
where?
On WikiFeet.
I didn't know that was
Yeah.
a thing. Okay.
Put the link in the notes. Pues Curly, muchas gracias. We
Thank
loved
you for having me.
just
I
loved
appreciate
having
you. Thank you.
Gracias. Pues con eso.
Con eso, well, thank you guys for joining us today, paletitas. And to keep up with the latest episode of Las Paleteras, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, all the redes sociales. So please follow us.
Y recuerden, amigas, que la vida es más sabrosa con nosotras porque nosotras somos
Las Paleteras.
Las paleteras.
Hi, Paletitas. This podcast is produced by Joel and Elpidio Perez, along with your hosts. Las Paleteras is edited by Augusto Martinez, with music by Cintia Morado and Ingrid Guijarro. Special thanks to our friends at Mitu and Sonoro for production support.